and I'm never surprised by people thinking that it's an industrial town and always have been, but I'm told across the especially the Black Country, we've probably got more green spaces and rural areas than most. So for somebody locally, it's no surprise.
Has it hurt having to do a deal with the Lib Dems?
Not really. I think we've had many years of fighting for the same seats in Willenhall. So there was always that political animosity, I suppose. But over the last couple of years, both myself and Ian Shires, the leader of the Lib Dems, have built up a good rapport, a good relationship, and I've always said for many years we've been on the same path, the journey together, just wrong sides of the road, and I think that coming together has got us where we are now.
It's because a lot of people will often argue, won't they, that local politics shouldn't be party politics. It should be about the community.
Well, I think it's always about the community, but you can't get away from the fact that people join political parties because they have different views of the world, and I'm a very community-centred individual, and I think that's what we get from working with the Lib Dems as well. And I would say that's not what we've had for a few years in Walsall.
What's the biggest challenge you face now, apart from you laugh because I suspect there are so many things you can't quite put a finger on it, can you? But I mean, I would imagine that the budget cuts is possibly the hardest thing.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we had a short period in 2014 to 2015, 10 months of setting a budget, saving £29 million, and we faced that once again. I think we learned some lessons through that. I think the finance is always going to be a challenge, but I think for me the biggest challenge is actually enthusing the people of the borough in what we do and getting involved. I think it was previously said by the previous leader that people were lazy to not go out and vote, and I think that's something that I disagree with. I think we should look internally first before we start criticising others. I think we need to do more ourselves.
I mean, it is difficult to get people to come out and vote, isn't it, for local elections? There's no two ways about it.
Oh, it is, and I think part of the problem has been that we've not engaged them enough in what we do locally. We have been a very centralised council for a long while now, and I think we need to change that and take democracy back out to the people.
Are people sufficiently interested?
Oh, I think if you read social media and you walk the streets of Willenhall, there are people who are really interested. I think there's sometimes a lack of understanding of what you can and can't do. We get, as councils, regardless of who runs the council, we get blamed for shops closing or not the right type of shops opening in towns like Willenhall. That's not under our control. We can influence things, but we just can't do that.
So apart from having to live with huge budget cuts, what's the biggest single challenge that you face in terms of trying to get something done?
Well, I think that, as always, it was proved last night that I was made the leader on the Mayor's casting vote, so each council meeting will be very interested, making sure that everybody turns up from my side to get things through. But I think this whole thing around how we empower and engage communities, for me, is essential and really making a real difference in the most deprived communities that we've got around this town.
Because that's the thing, it's easy to forget. People see like the new cinema coming up and anything new and shiny, and people go, hey, look, we've got this, we've got that, improvements to roads and things. But you don't have to go far to see areas which are run down, which are deprived, where people are struggling big time.
Oh, definitely. I'm lucky in one way that my day job is to run a community centre just up the road here in Pulfrey. So that keeps me grounded, but it also allows me to understand how difficult things are for people on the street. We've got real issues regarding private landlords who do not invest in their properties, that have a real knock-on effect to families, specifically the health of families. So I think there's some real challenges out there, but I think we've got a way that we honestly believe we can deal with that.
And when you see people wrapped in a blanket at night in a doorway, I mean, it simply shouldn't be happening in this day and age, should it?
And I remember raising that very same issue some 6 years ago, to be told that as a council they'd gone out there and people living on the streets was negligible. There was hardly anybody doing. I think the austerity that we've seen from this government over the last 6 years has created that, and it is difficult. I come into town every day from where I work in Pulfrey, come past the Glebe Centre. You see people, used to be 2 or 3 outside there looking for support and help, and the food banks that they're on there. Now there's groups of 20 and 30, and you know that most of those will be sleeping rough, and that's frightening for a town like this.
At the end of June, we vote on Europe. I'm not asking you to necessarily declare your hand unless you want to. I'm just thinking in terms of the knock-on effect that it has to everybody, and the way things will be. I mean, would you see as a council any palpable change?
I'm sure there will be massive changes. I have a fear that if the negativity of either way that we go will have a knock-on effect for at least 2 years, and on top of what we already see as the austerity measures by the government will be a double whammy for towns like Walsall. So yeah, I have major fears. I've always said that I would as an individual vote to stay in. I'm a community-based person. I think I'm a consensual person, so people coming together to solve problems is important to me. But the more I look at the swing to the right across Europe, it is frightening in lots of ways. And if we stay in, I think we've got some massive issues to deal with.
And briefly, I mean, the campaign will have run almost 6 months, won't it, by the time we vote? It's almost been too long. It ought to be like a general election, didn't it, a month? Because I think people are getting fed up on it, they know.
I've seen quite a lot on social media where the people set up groups to talk about this issue, and it starts off with hundreds, maybe 1,000 people involved, and slowly they all disappear. Because you're right, I think people are switching off completely over the issue.